Well, what's happened to my son and my family is tragic. And if we had known what pot could do, um, and Evan had never smoked it because he thought it was, this natural, cool, healthy thing. Our lives would be a lot different today, and he would be living differently. We didn't know any better in 2016, 17, and after. We didn't know. We, especially as parents, would think, oh, it's just like it was when, I was a kid in the 80s but THC content going from a 3% to a 40 to 100%, there's something wrong with that, not having a regulation on that. And my son was such a health nut. He, I remember talking to him and asking him about, what do you want? And he said, it's just weed. It's sun-grown, organic, just smoking a little weed. Evan was very competitive, successful in just about everything he did. Very kind, loving, caring. He's the oldest of a blended family of 5 and sort of the leader of the family. He played every sport you can imagine, was quite successful with golf early on, and to be honest, driving him to a golf course for 4 hours was a lot more fun than a baseball field for a couple hours. So I took to that just as well. And his other great passion in sports was soccer. And he was, I believe, co-captain at the time. His high school team won CIF for our area, which was spectacular. And he was captain of his golf team senior year and went to CIF. And I don't know, Evan was amazing. His father is a professional musician. Guitar is his main instrument, plays with the symphony, tours, writes, produces. Evan grew up in the music, not business, but grew up around music in the studio. So Evan's fairly proficient in guitar, but plays maybe 4 other instruments too. Smart kid, really smart kid, and really close with me. He was probably my favorite person. And we really enjoyed spending time together. Baseball games, concerts, you name it, we'd get together. He took a lot of pride in his younger brothers and sisters and was very involved with the family, even at an age where, didn't have to. Yeah, he was a scholarly athlete and had every intention of going off to college and, completing the dream of a golden child, We live near the beach, and Evan was a great surfer and actually gave surf lessons in high school for $100 an hour through a local surf shop. And so, he never really needed, he had a lot of gifts and he didn't need for anything. He was given a car, but all of his money that he spent or entertainment, whatever he spent his money on, it was his own earned money. And he was pretty good at almost everything. He went on post-high school, he went on a trip to Bali with a couple friends, and the parents got together and we all had a conversation with the kids and said, the only thing is just don't smoke weed there. We all kind of knew that they would dabble in weed. We didn't think it was a big issue at the time. Evan was never a drinker, and he wasn't a partier. He certainly enjoyed parties, especially if I wasn't home for the weekend. But he'd host them. I learned from the police. But yeah, we made them all promise, just don't do that. It's against the law in Bali. It's a very serious offense. You're an American. You guys are going away on a surf trip for 3 weeks. Have a great time without that. He came back, and he was set to go to University of Boulder, which concerned me a little because I thought, it's an area that's very weed forward. And I know that he kind of likes that. And, but last second he decided, because he had gotten a scholarship from University of Hawaii, and he thought, you know what, I'm going to go to University of Hawaii instead, because I was offered a scholarship. And he buys an airplane ticket, and he's on his way to Hawaii when he contacts me and says, Mom, I'm going to Hawaii. I'm like, Evan, no, we're actually going to Boulder in 2 weeks. He goes, no, Hawaii starts Monday. It's a different schedule, and I got to get there because I don't want you to spend the money on Boulder. I already have a scholarship at Hawaii. It's a lot cheaper. I'm going to do that. So he shows up there, and he makes it work. They give him the classes that he wants. He doesn't get the scholarship. That's gone. They give him a room. They make him, he has to take another vaccination because they require a different one than many of the other universities. And he goes on to live his life in Hawaii, surfing and studying. And it was maybe, he stayed the whole year. But when I went to go visit him the first time by myself, we had a great time, and I was leaving, and he came out and he said, Mom, I really want to go home with you. And I was like, oh, come on, Evan, this is great. What do you mean? And he said, I don't know. I don't think I'm ready. I just want to come home. And I said, no, you know what? All of your ancestors, they had to go to war at your age. You only have to go to college. Enjoy this time. I'll see you on break. And I left. So the rest of the year turned out pretty fine. I don't know what his grades were because he's over 18, so we don't have privy to that. He decides he wants to go to UCLA instead. You can't just jump into UCLA. So he decides to go to Santa Monica Junior College and transfer over. So I get to go with him to Santa Monica Junior College and discuss with the counselor what classes he should take. I get privy to his classes from University of Hawaii. So I first get my first look, and he's like, I want to go to marketing, and I want to go to UCLA. Doesn't make any sense. It's not a marketing school. And she says, well, judging by your grades, you got an A in an upper division English class freshman year. Why don't you major in English? He was like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll do that. So he planned out his classes, and, he's on his way. Got him an apartment. He did a semester, and before you know it, he's home again, and COVID is about to hit. And that's really was an incredible downfall. He was home in the house with us. He was golfing a lot, it's doing what he does. But I felt something different about him. And he just kept saying, I might want to just go into music. I might just want to, be a professional rapper. And he was always just in his room making beats. And I'm like, that's a great hobby, but you've learned from your father. It's not something that you just, I think I'm going to go be a musician now. Um, so, but I'm asking him, Evan, are you on something? And he goes, no, I'm not on anything. And I'm like, come on, just tell me. Something's different. And I don't know what it is, but you got to talk to me. Tell me what you're on. And he said, Mom, I'm just smoking a little weed. I'm like, okay, well, I'm supporting you here. He's like, yeah. And I said, okay, in order to continue this support, you need to take a drug test for me. Can you do that? And he's like, sure. Takes a drug test. It doesn't include THC because who would have thought that that would be a big problem at the time? And it's a different test for that. So it's clean. And I'm like, it just seems different. What is going on? COVID hits, move out of the house. He has to find a place to stay. He stays at his stepfather's little studio apartment. And I learn he is just sitting there smoking weed constantly. And when we look back, I asked his stepfather not that long ago, do you think that he was mental, or do you think he was just smoking so much weed? And he said, I couldn't really tell the difference. I'm not sure. He left there. He started buying cars and selling them and buying them, always losing money. But, I want this. And then selling it because he needed the money for weed because he wasn't making money now. He got an apartment downtown. I went to visit him. I'm like, I need to get eyes on this. I was living in further away at that time, a couple hours away. So I came down and made an appointment to see him, made arrangements to see him. Brought my daughter and the dogs, and I'm going to come pick you up. We're going to go to dinner. I want to see your place. I saw the bag of weed in his drawer. He was just disheveled, a little arrogant, kind of angry, like anxiety-ridden. And he's like, I just need to take a shower first. And I'm trying to clean his apartment for him because that's what a mom would do his laundry, And he's like, I don't want you to do all that. I didn't want anything touched. Okay. When he goes into the shower, I go to the bag of weed and I take some out. And I take it with me. And I think, I'm going to show this to someone I know that uses this. And I'm going to find out, is this a different weed? Like what? Something's going on that I don't understand. And I can't find any other drugs. I mean, I hunted that place up and down. To me, I'm looking at something else. I don't know what it is. We're going to dinner. And he actually stops walking with my small daughter, our dogs, and myself. He stops. He goes, I'm going to catch up in a second. And he goes behind a street pole and he smokes some weed, like we don't know, like we can't see him because he's behind a street pole. And he keeps going. And when he catches up, I said, Evan, I'm really uncomfortable with the fact you just did that. You have your family here. That's not okay. That's really not okay. Little angry. Okay, let's just go. And I thought, all right, we have a dinner and we're leaving, so let's attack it later when we're not all here. Had dinner, and again, it was strange. And it was almost the first thing I noticed was like a disassociation and a little bit of paranoia, I realized. That was don't go through my stuff. You don't need to clean anything. When he was in the shower, I went through everything. So I don't know where the paranoia came from because there was nothing, to find that I didn't already know about her. He showed me. We left and it was super sad. I'm thinking, gosh, he has a big problem with weed. Didn't order a drink at the table. Could have. He's of age. He's not a drinker. And before I know it, he's not paying rent. COVID time. No job. Not enough money to, continue asking me to help. I won't help unless he's going to do something better with his life. And he decides he's going to go to LA, stays in hostels because he could afford them. I was asking me, can you put me up in a hotel? He did this a couple times, you do it. And then it's, what I can do for you? I can have you talk to someone and I can send you to a rehab. So if you want a place to live, I've got it for you and it'll be great. but it will include sobriety. And he doesn't want any of that. So he hangs up. He's like, none of that, none of that. A lot of guilt trips. Hey, now I have nowhere to live. He's staying in his car. I'm basically homeless. I'm like, my heart's aching because I'm thinking, that's not what I want for him. I could provide more for him, but he's got to want more. And if I provide more, I'm just going to prolong what's happening here. So I didn't. And that's painful. It's counterintuitive for a parent not to care for their child physically. And so, that went on for a while. And eventually it got to a point where he lost the car. And then he was on the street. He's asking for help, and I'm saying, I have help for you. I have help for you. And I'm having people call him from rehabs and insurance companies and, trying to get him to go someplace. And he finally agrees. So I get him to go during COVID to a rehab. His father drops him off. And because it was COVID, they weren't able to do group things. They weren't able to have people come in and do certain treatments. And it was a bad experience. Bad timing, bad experience. So he left. He probably would have left anyway, but he left after 3 days. He also snuck his phone in. I think he always has 1 or 2 phones. So before you knew it, day 2, we're getting texts. How could you do this to me? I hate you. I need money for cigarettes. Everybody smokes here. I don't want to be unhealthy and smoke, whatever. So he walks out, and that's a shame. And it just seems to get... It just seems to get... well, it does. It just gets progressively worse. At this point, he's decided... A little earlier, he changed his name. He went to a party at his stepfather's house, and he sees his old babysitter and the family and extended friends and so forth. And the babysitter goes up to him and says, Evan, it's so good to see you. Give him a big hug. And he's like, oh, thank you, thank you. But I'm not Evan anymore. I go by Tom. And she's like, what? He goes, yeah, Tom Party. I go by Tom Party. And they're like, okay, huh. And so this is a big discussion at the party now. That's the background discussion. What's going on with this guy? He looks fairly normal, but he's talking about things that don't seem normal. There is an ex-cop there that's a friend of his stepdad. And he discusses, sits and talks to him and tries to figure out, what could it be? And they tell me later, we think he could be on heroin. We think it could be heroin. And I'm like, oh, do you? And I'm thinking to myself, that kid would never touch heroin with a, I get it. There's something weird, and I don't know what it is. But I go down that, I'll leave my mind open. Let's check it out. Fast forward. The kid's, he's homeless, back and forth, comes home and wants to be there, but then as soon as not overnight, he wants to eat with you, he wants to talk with you, he wants to watch a movie, he would like to stay on the couch and leave when he wants, but if you enforce any rules, that's it, and he's got another place to go. Where it was, I have no idea. But that kid, he... At one point, it's well past COVID. I'm now living back in our community in Southern California. And Evan is on the streets, and I know where he is. He's in a familiar beach town for him. Community. And he's such a smart person. He's figured out basically how to be homeless now. He's figured out the safe place to sleep. He's figured out where to stand in line to get food. He's figured out where you get food because not necessarily homeless, but you don't have a lot of money, so it'll be leftover grocery store food that needs to be cooked. Sort of heartless that you stand in line and get a box of, raw food that you may not have a refrigerator for. You have no stove, no provisions in order to prepare this food, but you're given the food and you're hungry. So he has, however he gets his little bit of money, he goes and he this particular time happens to be his birthday. And I'm trying to see him because it's his birthday. And I buy him, a piece of cake, a sandwich, like all his favorite stuff. I know he's really angry with me. He hates me. He does not want to see me. So I'm thinking, all right, if I get to see him, great. But if I don't, at least I have his birthday things for him, and I'm going to leave him at home and tell him, you can stop by and get it. Well, he stops by and he causes a bunch of damage, breaks some things, takes the cake, smashes against the wall, wants nothing to eat, angry as can be. And I get home and see that and think, oh, my heart's just broken. Okay. And he goes through these hate cycles with me, right? Screaming horrible names and calling me terrible things. And eventually later he calls me and he goes, I got my big box in line today. Do you want to come have dinner with me? And I'm like, sure. What would you like to have? What can I bring? And he said, no, I got it all. Okay. All right. And he said, just come to the beach and I'll be at the fire pits. And I went, okay. So I go to the beach and the fire pits, and I'm nervous as could be, and I'm going as fast as I can, and I'm bringing blankets with me in case I can give him a blanket. And I'm almost there, and he calls me again. He goes, there's too many people here. And he's no, get away from me here in the background. It's a lot of homeless people will spend their time there. And he goes, it's just too crowded. Meet me over at this other park nearby. And I went, okay. So I go to the park, and he was setting up the grill, but he had wood and fire starter. And I said, do you have any charcoal? And he said, no. I went to the store to get charcoal, but it was too expensive. So I was able to get a couple pieces of wood, and I could afford to buy the fire starter. I'm like, oh, that's great. So he uses part of the box to light his fire, and he puts his pork loin on that's getting burnt like you wouldn't believe. And he takes a peach and cooks it up and has some basil on the side, and he tears more of the boxes apart, and he sets it out like it's a board to serve food on. And he puts the pork and the basil and the grilled peach. And I mean, it was heartwarming to see that he cared, and he was trying, and of course I ate some because I wanted to be gracious to him, and I appreciated the meal. It was actually one of my favorite meals I think I've ever had. But he just loved eating it. He was so fulfilled. And I realized part of what he was doing is he didn't want anything from me other than what he would ask for. So if he was asking for, buy me a car, and I would say, no, I'm not buying you a car. He didn't want anything else. Didn't matter what it was. If he's asking for a cigarette box, can you buy me some cigarettes? And no, I don't have any. He said, well, he didn't want the food. Even if he's hungry, I don't want that food because you're not giving me what I want. And so I'm starting to realize, okay, the games that I'm in are, for lack of a better term, just his mind, his belief systems change. Things are weird. Things are weird. And I still don't really understand it. I know it's all weed, though. I do know that. Yeah, and so that was a beautiful night. How he earned the money to buy some of the things is he ended up getting a job at a gas station for overnight. He'd sleep in the bushes nearby during the day, and he'd start a shift at the overnight hours that nobody wants. I know at one point they told him, you need to get a new pair of pants because, he has no clothes and they're terrible. So first paycheck, he'd make something and. So the day at the park on his birthday, after he threw the cake and, made it that I don't want anything from you, he went and he spent his first paycheck. I think he bought this old BMW. Labels are really important to him, for $800. I'm surprised it made it to the parking lot. It was very damaged and uncared for. It's what you would expect for $800 in a BMW. So, but now he's got a place to sleep. And to him, that's everything. Everything. So he stays in the car and works his night shift and smokes weed all day and gets his free food and thinks he's just got the life of Riley, right? Eventually he loses his job. And he is hate speech to me again, threatening me through text, talking as though he's in a video game, on text, not talking, but texting me, awful things that it's hard for me to even think about. And so I decide, okay, I'm going to show these texts to the sheriff and I'm going to have him arrested because maybe if I just get him in jail, that'll be the answer. And so I do, and he gets arrested for threat. And of course, I am like, okay, how do I backpedal? How do I just get help from this, but backpedal? System doesn't work like that. Evan isn't thinking clearly. He's in jail, and he's just begging, get me out, get me out, get me out. I can't be here. And his public defender tells him, if you go and just plead guilty, you'll get out sooner. You don't have to wait for trial. You don't have to go through all that. Just plead guilty to the felony threat that they're accusing you of. So I go to court. I don't know this. I go to court. I've written a letter to the judge. I'm, ready to stand up and say I'm the victim. And I'm saying I never at any time felt an actual physical threat. I did not like the wording. It concerns me to see my son speaking this way. But I never felt a physical threat. Didn't have a chance to say it because he stood up and said guilty. And I went, no, no. Somehow we were able to undo that. And it was extremely complicated. Took a few attorneys' brains, but we were able to get through that terrible time. In the meantime, we do have a restraining order now. He's not allowed to talk to me, which proved to be more difficult upcoming. But once he's released from jail after a short amount of time, he just is sent to the street, with nothing. I'm thinking, well, for sure they're going to put him in a program that, something will happen, nothing. And so I go hunting, and I'm looking at his social media at all times. Lots of people do. It's like watching a train wreck, and you can't turn away. Almost humiliating. But sometimes he will post information that will be helpful for me to be able to find him. And you end up in that, if I just see him, maybe I can, So this is a time when he posts a picture of himself in a church. And I send it to my girlfriend. It's raining season, and we're both on our computers, and we're going through pictures of churches in our area. And she's like, I feel like it's Catholic. I said, me too. And, we kept going, and we finally found one. And I said, I think it's this place. She goes, yeah, but it's not exact. I said, I know, but I just get the feeling. I feel like it's the same colors. It's the same. I need to go there. And she's like, okay, go. I'll pick up the kids. She took care of my kids for me so I could race downtown. I race downtown, and I walk in the door, and I'm thinking, maybe they help. I'm not Catholic. I'm thinking, well, maybe they help homeless. So I go to the altar boy, whoever's it, and I said, hi, I'm looking for my son, and I think he's been at your church. Is this your church? And he goes, I don't know. I said, do you help homeless? And he said, I don't know. Let me get you, Father. And I'm like, what? And he goes, here, come. there's a mass about to start. He tells me to come traipsing through the church. Come on. He gets to the stairs. He does his holy water thing. And I look at him like, I'm not allowed to go up there. And, and so he goes back, up the stairs, back to where the father is getting his sermon ready. And we disrupt him. And he looks at me like, what do you want? And I'm like, I'm so choked up at that point, I just show him the picture and say, I'm looking for my son. And I said, I think this is your church. He said, it is my church. And he goes, look, it's the back. It's not the altar. And I went, oh, okay, that explains. Got it. And I said, have you seen my son? And he said, no. And my heart fell. And then he looked again. And he goes, actually, yeah. I saw him a few days ago when it was raining. And I was like, okay, hope, okay, I found the right area. He said he goes, his problem is with someone else, and I said, that is his problem. And he said he thinks he may want to be Catholic. Would you be okay with him being Catholic? And I said, well, his father's Jewish. I brought him to a Christian church most of his life. He understands many religions. Catholicism would be great. Anything at this point. Anything at this point. And he said, okay, give me your number. I'll have him call you when he comes, when I see him again. And I said, no, he'll run. If you could just please call me yourself, let me know he's here, and I'll come down. And he said, okay, I don't know when I'll see him. He'd only seen him once. And the very next day, the father texted me a picture of my son, Evan, laying down, sleeping on a park bench in his courtyard, the church courtyard. And he said, your son's here. And I drove as fast as I possibly could. And I was so excited to lay my eyes on him. And I got there and he was gone. And the gardener, who didn't speak a lot of English, came up to me, and he saw me very sad and said, he pointed me to the mother, Mother Mary, and, like, maybe you need to pray. And I said, no, I'm here for my son. And I said, he was here, and I showed him the picture of him sleeping on the bench, and where the bench was, he goes, oh, he'll be back. And he pointed me over, and he said, look. And his phone was charging on the wall. And there was an empty water bottle, which is typical of Evan because he'll only drink water and he'll only eat really healthy food at this point still. So I waited a little while and I realized, okay, where am I going to find him? So I get in the car, I have my dog with me, roll down the windows in case he can send him out. And he actually makes a motion that I knew he was nearby. And I look, and there's Evan setting up to sleep in a windowsill near the church. And I look down, and it's rainy, it's cold. So anybody that is homeless is trying to find a spot out of the rain, right? And you got to understand that our shelters are full, over capacity, and the very last person they're going to take is a young man. They're going to take children. They're going to take women. They're going to take elderly. They're not going to take a 20-some-year-old man. So I drive around the block a couple times because I'm thinking, what if he's angry at me? He might start screaming and at horrible things and, throwing things, because that's what he'll do at times. And finally I have the courage. I roll down the window and I say, oh my gosh, Evan, is that you? And he turns around and he looks at me and he's, Mom? And I was so happy it said Mom, right? And I'm like, yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. I can't believe I ran into you down here. I was just looking for our favorite old Italian place we used to go to, remember? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I'm just going to have dinner. Would you come with me? And he's like, yeah. And then he realizes he'd have to pack up all of his stuff. And he goes, no, I've already eaten. I don't want to go with you. And I went, Evan, well, I'm a little scared walking down here by myself at night. Would you consider just walking with me, walking me there to protect me? He said, yeah, I'll do that. And I went, okay. And he started to get in the car, and I'm like, I said, you know what? I'm going to go park and bring the dogs. So why don't you just, go meet me at that parking lot instead? So we walk over, we go to the restaurant. I'm thinking I hopefully can get him to stay. And I use the dog as an excuse as to why we have to stay on a patio, because he smells. He looks terrible. His hair is up to here. He is the homeless person that you picture. Um, and so I look at the lady, and I'm very clear. I speak very properly, and I'm making it very clear that this is an important meal for me. And I said, I would like to sit with my son in a place where my dog is also comfortable. So if we could please be on the patio out there. And she just knew. She's like, And she treated us so well. Brought us an extra candle, brought water and bread and butter and, everything that she could. And when we went to order, I said, what should I have, Evan? And he goes, well, I'm not going to have anything, but maybe maybe I'll have something. And I said, just order something, and if you don't want it, maybe I'll bring it home, or you can. And he's like, okay. He goes, well, I would have either this dish or that dish. And I said, well, then how about we order both? And then, whatever we want, we'll eat. And he goes, okay, but I'm not hungry. Okay. And she comes and she goes, I'm going to add the soup and salad. I said, good idea. He ate everything. My meal, his meal, the soups, the salads. We had a little bit of to go, And at one point, I don't know, this homeless person's walking by, because it's that area. And he's ranting. And he's begging for food and cigarettes and money, right? And we're sitting on the patio. And this is while we're eating. And he starts to ask me for money, and Evan stands up and protects me. And he's like, get out of here, buddy. Get on. Move on. And he's angry, and he's using this big angry 6'3", right? And the guy's like, oh. And he goes on, and I'm thinking, did he come because he thought I was comfortable because I'm with my son who's clearly homeless? Or, it was interesting, but he's very protective of me. And so we start to leave, we get our to-go, and he's like, I'd really like ice cream. So we go get ice cream. And he's dragging this on. And the next thing you know, it's, Mom, I'm so cold. Would you be willing to pay for a hotel room for the night? And I'm like, Evan, I don't know. Of course I'm willing to, but I'm like, I don't want him to know this, that I'll just give him what he needs. And he said, well, there's this place where you can just pay for the bed, and it's only like $35. And I went, oh, okay, well, I could spend $35 then. And he goes, okay. And so he's walking me there, really nervous, walking through the areas that we're going through. We get to the door. It's essentially sold out, but nobody's there to tell you it's sold out. And other people that are very much like him or with similar issues are out there coming up and nervous about us and running away. It was really awkward. And Evan finally realized that, converses or something or looks and sees that there's no beds available because the beds are gone. And I went, darn it. Okay. It's cold, isn't it? And he said, yeah. I'm like, well, will you walk me back to my car? He's like, yeah, I'll do that. And I'm thinking, what can I say? What can I say? And I finally said, Evan, I have an idea. If I brought you home with me tonight, you'd have to sleep in the garage, but I could put up a cot and you could sleep in the garage. Would you think about going with me and talking to someone tomorrow? If I did that for you, would you consider that? And he goes, I'd think about it. No, and no weed at my house. He goes, I could do that. And I went, okay. So I brought him home, got him in the shower, cleaned his clothes. He was mad at me. He doesn't want to change his clothes. He doesn't want them cleaned. He just doesn't want change. So that was a little stickler. I always have clothes for him because a mom in this situation has a rehab bag packed at all times. So you go into the rehab bag and pull out the razor and the toothbrush and everything you have ready. Didn't think about the nail clippers, but his feet are just a mess. And he's trying and he can't like bend it. He's just a mess. And he said, could you help me with my toenails? Absolutely. And it was such an emotional moment, but he let me touch him. And I was able to clean his toenail or trim his toenails for him. And he got clean and he put on clean clothes. And I thought, maybe this will make the difference. Maybe this will. And I see all of his stuff. He lets me see everything he has. Get him in the cot, give him water, give him everything he might need. Now, Evan, you can't, the bathroom's locked now. So are you got to be ready for the night. Yeah, I'm good. Okay. I wake up in the morning and a neighbor of mine had told me when she had seen him screaming and yelling a number of times in my yard. I live in sort of a fishbowl. She didn't tell me, actually. She told my next door neighbor, who I'm more friendly with. We know each other better. She said, I've seen something like what is happening with her and her son, to her son. I know a doctor that is really good, and he actually lives or works less than a mile from here. And I kept that in the back of my mind, and I thought, here I am. I have no one else to call. You can't get a psychiatrist for months, when you go through the lists. I've been through this. And I thought, well, I'll call this guy that's just down the street. And he answers. I'm like, have you ever heard of cannabis induced psychosis? And he says, yeah, I have. And I said, I told him about my son. And I said, is there anything that you could possibly do to help me? And he said, if you'd called last week, I would have said no. But there's some new research recently, and I think there's a chance I could do something to help you. He goes, how long would it take you to get here? And I'm like, right now? And he said, yeah. I'm like, actually, I'm a mile away. He goes, can you get him to the office? I said, I'll do my best. So I went in to get Evan. And he's getting angry. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He's upset, and I'm trying to keep him calm. And I finally say, how about a walk? Can we just go for a walk? And we'll go walk down and talk to this guy. I don't know what it'll be, but let's just go for a walk. He goes, and I'll walk with you. So we walk to the office. We go inside. He's so smart. We sit down. The guy has a big presence, very warm and welcoming. Was a DJ back in the day and is profoundly knowledgeable about music, as is Evan. So they connect. And he's like, hey, you know what? Do you want to try this treatment? I don't know how you're sleeping. And he's like, yeah, I don't sleep. Okay, you know what? We have this TMS treatment, magnets. He said, let's see how this makes you feel. And so sets him up with TMS treatment and vagus nerve treatment. And he's feeding him snacks. And every time he gets a snack, he lights up. And he goes, I really like the Oreos. Can I get more Oreos? Now he's like happy to sit there. Without the snack, he was not happy to sit there. He's like, yeah, let's get you more Oreos. What else do you like? Because I really like sandwiches from this place down the street. You like that sandwich? I like that sandwich. Let's get you a sandwich. So they build a rapport. He goes in, starts going in every day and getting TMS treatment. And he's going from this, these monster attitude into finally coming down. But now he starts crying. I can see my son back, but his emotions are heavy. It's almost like he has a little insight with this treatment. And it's the first time that he's had insight. And he's saying that, and he's like, I just have this bad energy, and like I wouldn't have broken that thing. It's just this energy within me, and I don't want that. And I'm like, oh my God, my heart's pounding, and I'm thinking, we got there. We're getting there. It's a battle to keep him off weed. If he can find weed, he's going to do weed. But we committed to this doctor. I can't have him in my house. I have younger children, teenagers. So I have a camper van, and in my driveway. And I set it up and say, here's the deal. You can sleep in here. You need to get a job. You need to find something to do during the day or take online classes. I don't care what it is. But 8 a.m., you're doing something. You see the doctor every day and you can sleep here. Okay, we make the arrangement with the doctor. Next thing you know, we know that what we need is antipsychotics. And so I call the doctor and say, is there any chance you'd be willing to? And he said, if he'll take it, I'll give it to him. So get him down there. He takes a shot. He doesn't know what it is. He knows what it is. He's been told. But in his mind, he is like, what? That hurt. And why am I doing this? He won't take Advil. He won't take melatonin. He will smoke weed because it's natural and organic, right? But he won't do these other things. So he goes out and he's reading about it. And it's within weeks with the TMS, the vagus nerve, the antipsychotic shot. It's a 30-day injectable. He's not at baseline, but he's not this crazy homeless person I saw. He actually wants to get a haircut. He wants to shower. He wants to change his clothes. He wants to go to sober living. And I'm like, okay. So here we go. We're on another plateau. Let's do it. Get him into the sober living, which is a great place. He knows people there from high school. Nobody had the weed issue. It was alcohol or, other substances. So it's hard for them. There's a difference, the cannabis induced psychosis. So he was kind of odd. It's a stigma, and the medicine would make him oversleep, so he would miss a meeting, and then there would be a discipline because you can't miss a meeting. We're all together in this group thing, and it's not strict because it's strict-ish, but it's not a rehab. It's a sober living. He belonged in rehab. I couldn't get him into rehab. He would go to sober living, so that's where I got him. He walked. He walked within 4 days, and that was horrible. So I kept him at home for a while under rules. Psychiatrist once a month, psychologist once a week, AA every single day, exercise, gym member, boxing classes, whatever it takes. Get a job, working, earn your own money to buy yourself a car if you want a car. I'm not giving you anything. And it worked out for a good amount of time. I could tell when he broke and started smoking weed because he's making money to be able to buy it. And it was so disappointing. And then he missed 2 AA meetings in a row. He didn't just miss it. He didn't go. He told me he was going, and he didn't go. And I had an inkling, so I walked my dog down through town to go to the AA meeting and see if he was there. And he wasn't there. There was also a town concert that day, and I thought, I wonder if he went to the concert instead. Later, he came back and said, no, I went. And I went, okay, here's the deal. You didn't go, and you need to leave. You can't come back here tonight. And he's like, what? And I said, I'm sorry. We had arrangements. This is 2 meetings in a row. So here's the deal. You need to make those up +2. So you can't sleep here. You can't stay here. You have no resources until you fulfill all 4 extra ones plus your daily, and then come back and talk to me. We'll do a weed test and figure out where you are. And he was devastated. He was crying. He called me, which is, when they're psychotic, he doesn't cry when he's psychotic. He's calling me, why can't I just come home? And I'm like, Evan, you just can't. You've got to follow these rules. This is the way it is. Calls his dad, the musician who happens to be my neighbor too. And he said, Mom won't let me come home, and I'm working and I'm doing, all these great things. And Mark calls me, his father, and says, Evan called and said that you kicked him out. And I said, yeah. He said, he's doing so good. I said, he is doing really good, but these are my rules. And he didn't, so he's got to do this. I learned 3 days later, he let him move in with him instead. And he didn't have the same rules. And so he wouldn't go back for another shot. And this is 7 months in, so he had been really well for 7 months. Didn't go back for another shot. Wouldn't go back to counseling, doesn't go to AA. He goes to work, which his dad thought was good enough. And before you know it, he's back to the dredges. That almost brings me here. It just got worse and worse and worse. He was fired from his work. He was clearly having outbursts. It may have been why they decided to part ways at work. He had stayed with someone that was working there on a temporary basis, and that guy kicked him out. He was getting sick again. It was bad. And he had earned enough money to buy a car from a friend of mine, another BMW, in much better shape. But still, a few $1,000 car, but a decent A to B car with a label. He sells that because it's worth some money and buys, a drudge car. Now he's rich because he has $3,000 in his pocket and a car. He gets to live in his car. His psychosis gets worse and worse, and he starts the depersonalization. I mentioned the I'm Tom party. Later it went to my name's Rover, and now he's Evan again. But he'll be a rap star and he'll post music online. And I'm talking like 4 songs a day and thinking that, he's going to get a hit and it's going to go viral. But he also talks online as though he's talking to a friend in his psychosis and says just outrageous things. And so, like I say, it's like watching a train wreck. You can't look away. He gets a lot of views. One of them went viral. But he would also say sensational things. And eventually, the social media site took his account away because he said the wrong things. And I was so thankful because I thought, at least he can't be the spectacle. The guy's sick. So he at one point, it's strange religious beliefs. And other times it's strange cultural beliefs. It could be, it's so bad. At one point he was praying to Allah. And this was after he was playing video games on his phone with it was one of those war games, and they were fighting their war in that game in that country. And so he decided, now I'm Allah. And he would go, pull out a rug and lay on the ground and pray. And I'm like, okay. I don't ever tell him it's not true. Your beliefs are nuts. You just go along with it and say, okay, well, I just hope everything's good. Let's keep going. Just to try to maintain a relationship where I would see him seldomly, It was a lot of devil speak, 666. It moved from Allah onto this. And in this time, he is tattooing himself everywhere. In the beginning, he was buying tattoos and, whatever. They were nice, He bought himself a tattoo gun. And he's putting tattoos all over his body. And the worse the psychosis gets, the more, what did he call them? No job area tattoos he would put on himself. So, including all over his face. So he went from tattoo gun to, when he was in jail, of course, he didn't have that. He used a staple and a pen ink. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But he would just, and then open the ink up and, make tattoos on his face, wherever. It looks like a detention desk, quite frankly. Eventually, he's cutting himself.
I get a detention desk like the. Yeah, sorry. Took me a minute.
If you don't make light of it, sometimes you just cry. So, cutting himself and putting the ink in, just it's excessive, and I'm sure has. And then now he thinks his tattoos have powers, so his tattoos protect him from anyone. He could be walking down the street, and he used to walk down the street. He was a very handsome boy, tall, good-looking, athletic, scholarly, intelligent boy. And people would look at him and smile. And, now he certainly feels the difference because he walks down the street and people are like, they don't want to be next to him. So he'll like lift up his shirt and show his tattoos because that protects him from the energy. It's strange. It's strange. Eventually, he also starts almost like tattooing his car. He gets red paint and he's drawing all over his car, just like he was his body. He's making a little bit of money working at essentially delivering food. People order food and he delivers it, and he makes that delivery fee. That's how he's buying his gas and his weed. And so the car is terrible. He pulls up in my driveway one day with it, and I already knew what it looks like because he posts all these pictures, right? And I said, Evan, I can't have this in my driveway. I will not have this in my driveway. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to take a shower. I have an outside surf shower. I'm just going to take a shower. I'll leave in a minute. Goes and helps himself to a shower. I'm so angry. I go get a moving blanket and I put it over the car with all this devil worship stuff. And I'm angry. And he finally comes back out and he's like, what'd you do? I said, I will not have this in my house. You got to go. So he leaves. At this point now he goes into a phase where he thinks he's a race car driver. And he's playing race car games, video games. And he's doing a lot of, I don't know what they call it, where they slide. He had a word for it. I don't remember what it is. But
Drifting.
Drifting. Oh, he loved drifting. He bought a ticket to Florida to see a professional race car. He thought he'd be able to drive in it. I thought there's no way they would let him on a plane. There's just no way. And he did. He got there and he got back, which is, you can't understand it. I thought for sure he'd be stuck in Florida. I'm talking to my friends about getting a Marchman's Act, getting an attorney. That's it. I got him in the right state. This is going to go. And 2 days later, before it all comes together, after I've talked to everybody to put it in place, he's back driving and drifting, right? With a new girl. And he drifts into the wrong guy one night. He's driving near the beach. A couple is in a car, big burly guy, and Evan drifts over toward him, almost hits him. I'm sure his tires are hardly there, right? Another time he had gotten in a couple accidents. Actually had to buy a small saw and saw off his bumper because it was hitting the wheel in order to keep driving. And then all the painting, this thing is a mess. So the guy gets out of his car. He's like, buddy, and so they're like, it's a cockfight. And the guy starts recording Evan. He's saying all of his crazy things. And the guy's recording him and blocking him from leaving, which just, Evan just went berserk. And finally he gets away somehow. Police get him. They all know him in town. They finally got him. They put him in jail in December. And the calls start coming in. You got to get me out of here. You got to get, all you need to do, just do this. Just nobody will, we eventually stopped taking calls. He stayed in, same thing. The attorney, his public defender, said, you can get out quicker. All you have to do is plead guilty. I thought for sure he learned the first time. Went up and I was in court watching. Couldn't say anything because I wasn't a victim or have anything to do with it at this point. He pled guilty, and I lost my breath. I just couldn't believe it. So I'm like, okay, well, time in jail. Maybe they'll give him, something else. Eventually, what it came down to is they just put him on an open probation where he doesn't have to do anything. He wouldn't have been charged with anything had he not done that, because there was no real threat. Maybe reckless driving, but and no drugs. But his attorney made sure that he can still use cannabis for medical reasons, of course. But yeah, he can still do cannabis. It just was so infuriating. I can't tell you, because that's his problem. No rehab, no help, nothing. Back to the street. So he actually comes to my house the first day out of jail, second day out of jail. And he says, Mom, I really need help. He thinks they're going to send him to a rehab. He said, I really need help. I need to find a rehab. And I'm like, really? Okay, let's go. I get a call from the guy that owns the sober living place I put him in. And he said, hey, I got a call from Evan. And he sounds serious. Like, I think he wants to make a difference. Would you be willing to pay for it if he's in? And I said, yes, essentially, yes. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I need to lay eyes on him and talk to him and see if it would work. But, I'm willing to do that. And I said, okay, great. So Evan stays the night. We're making breakfast. He's not totally psychotic now, because you got to remember he's been in jail for, I think he was there for almost 2 months. So he comes out and he hasn't smoked weed. His worst psychosis is when he's coming off of weed, not when he's high, when he's coming off of it. So it was terrible when he was first in jail. As it went on, it was a lot better. When he comes out, where his thoughts a little strange here and there, but we could play chess. His cognitive skills were not what they were, but they're still strong. Your brain needs to heal for at least a year after this. Tommy texts me as I'm making breakfast with them, thinking this is the best day of my life. Everything's going to change. Tommy texts me and says, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of Evan. Can you have him answer his phone? I'm in the area and I can stop by, because he knows where I live. And I said, he's actually right next to me. And he goes, uh-oh, because he's calling him. He's on his phone, and the guy, Evan's not answering. He's had a nice night at my house, watching movies and being cared for, and everything will be fine that way, right? So I go to Evan, and I say, oh, you know what? So I'm cooking. Tommy is going to come. He's like, what? So Tommy's going to come over and, while we're having breakfast, he goes, I didn't sign up for that. And I said, but you said you wanted to talk to him. You contacted him. He goes, but I didn't plan on that. Yeah. And he goes outside angry. Pretty sure he found weed and he was smoking. And I went out there and I said, Evan, are you smoking here? And he just, kind of like hit it. And he said, I don't need this. I said, you don't? Are you sure? He said, nope. And he left. Ever since then, it's been a game of chase. Calling the parole officer constantly. She won't talk to me. She won't talk to anybody that calls. His father, his aunt, who's a sociologist. She'll accept information, but she won't talk to us. There's no ramifications for anything that's happened so far. And he is so very sick right now. He's so very sick. For a few days, I won't know where he is. I know that he's now homeless in a downtown area instead of the beach area, which really troubles me because it's not as safe for him. And he's still making a few dollars here and there by delivering food at night. I know he's eating out of trash cans now. He loves this dense area downtown because there's lots of very good restaurants. And I guess people give him their leftovers as they walk out, or, I don't know, but he runs into leftovers all the time. He'll send me pictures of look what I got, I'm like, oh God, my heart. And there's absolutely nothing I can do at this point. I'm at a total loss. It's actually been in the entire time when two rehabs, but one was twice that he's walked out of. So he's walked out of 3 rehabs 3 times and sober livings 3 times, and then away from the opportunity for that now. Opportunities all the time. So he doesn't have a car. His car was taken. It's kind of interesting. It was taken, impounded when he was arrested. And they said since there was like a criminal offense, you should be able to get your car back. Don't worry. The car lot didn't think the same way. So it was $600 to get his car back that might be worth $600, but he believes it's worth $4,000. So that's my new battle. He calls, or he doesn't call, he texts horrible messages to me saying, give me the $600 for the car or else you're going to regret it. You'll never hear from me again. You took everything away from me that I could succeed with. All I need is a car to be able to deliver food and have a place to sleep, and you'll see how successful I'll be. And you are nothing but a, fill in the blank, every horrible word you can imagine. And I have to turn away and then eventually sometimes just reach out and say, hey, I love you. If you decide you need some help that I'm willing to offer, always reach out. But that's all I have. And then every now and then he'll show up, we'll look out, and he'll be at our outside shower. And then quickly leave. I think he's back to the hate speech again, so he's clearly very psychotic. And at this point, as a mother, I'm actually just, you pray for so many things. I would just like to see him arrested and for something that isn't horrible so that he can just be put away for a while and safe. So I know where he's sleeping and I know something can be accountable. It's horrifying knowing he's out there by himself. And inside, he's a 15-year-old little boy. Frightened out of his mind, without senses, and not knowing where he belongs. Because in jail, he said, well, the black guys hated me. They called me, because he raps, and he's not a horrible music guy, he grew up with it. Not a professional, but he's good. And so he'd, do his rap, and the guys were like, you're a vulture culture. No, you're a culture vulture. Yeah, culture vulture. You're being a culture vulture. And they hated him. And he said, all the Mexican guys here, they have relatives that, their dads were here. They all know each other. They have, they have people on the outside. They have the gang members. I don't belong there. He goes, I don't belong anywhere. I don't belong anywhere. I'm like, well, you don't belong there. You don't belong there. Oh,